Well, look at it. We've ran 4 races of the 10, so we're simple math, 40% of the way, but still a long ways to go. But certainly a great start for our whole team to have won 2 races, and I think we're 6th and 7th in the other 2. So that's certainly the start we all dreamed of as a team. Now we just got to keep that run up, which we know is not going to be easy. There's certainly a lot of great cars in the field. I'm sure the 11 and the 5 are going to run really well here this weekend. And I've been looking at Jeff Gordon. He's ran really well over this stretch as well. So, nothing's going to be given to us, that's for sure. But I'm certainly very proud of where our team stands as of now. So we're hoping to keep that run up, and all signs point to a great group of guys that I believe can get the job done. So I'm really looking forward to this stretch, and Charlotte's a good week for us to prove ourselves again. I felt very fortunate to get through Talladega with the outing that we had, and to have a points lead. So we need to take advantage of it and capitalize off it, and I think we're prepared to do so.
Thank you, Brad. We'll take questions. Start right here with Tom Jensen, and then Lee, and then Nate.
Hi, Brad. Tom Jensen, Speed.com. I'm sure you've heard this morning that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is sitting out the next 2 races with concussion. You sort of raised the bar on tough guy status last year at Pocono after you broke your ankle and hurt your back. Can you talk a little bit about the psychology of how difficult it is to step away from the race car, from your own race car, and how much you bond with that and play through pain?
Yeah, well, that didn't take long, did it? Well, first off, I'd say that I was as shocked as anyone else to hear that stuff today, but certainly wish Dale the best, and I know he's got a lot of people saying that, but certainly I mean it. But it's a tough situation to race in this sport, and to be under injury. You're always left wondering, what the line is, and I think we all have our own code for that. Certainly, you rely on a team to make your cars make them go fast and to run at a competitive level. And you know that they make a lot of sacrifices in their own lives to make it possible, whether that's something as simple as missing out on their son or daughter's basketball game or dance recital or whatever it might be, or their own injury. I've got a couple pit crew guys that we've had rotate in and out this year who've hurt themselves. And so as a driver, the temptation is to, for me at least, to honor that back by yourself finding a way to persevere through adversity, and physical injury is certainly one of them. But then you're left balancing that with the knowledge that sometimes you can compete through an injury and perpetuate whatever damage there is, or even worse, risk those around you. So there's certainly a fine line to walk, and every injury is different. But I would say that every driver will encounter that at some point in their career, and has to find their own path through it.
Let's go to Lee, Nate Ryan, and then David Newton.
Lee Spencer, Fox Sports. When you persevered at Pocono, though, you said that nobody's getting in my race car. He doesn't have a choice, and under the circumstances, when he's had the kind of year he's having, which is his best year arguably in 5 years, how much harder do you think, the Dale that the Dale that's helped you, the Dale who you live down the street from, how hard must this be for him to be sitting on the sidelines?
Well, for any race car driver, not being in the car is your worst fear. It's the nightmare that you have. I have the nightmare where, you wake up late and they drop the green and you're not in the car yet, and, things like that. It's your worst fear to not be in the race. And, that's the competitive desire that you have as a race car driver. And so missing the show is terrible. It's just terrible to watch it and not be a part of it. But it's terrible to wreck out or in the race and have to watch it, let alone to never be in it. and it's just a tough situation. I don't know how to express it any differently than that, and certainly not anything that anyone wants to see happen.
All right, let's go Nate Ryan, David Newton, and Randy Kovitz.
Nate Ryan, USA Today. Brad, I don't know if you listened to Dale Jr., but he intimated there were times when he thinks he had concussions and then just sort of waited the symptoms to clear and then raced that weekend. A two-part question for you. Have you sustained concussions in racing and then raced with them? Do you have an idea of how many you've sustained? And what are the dangers of racing with a fuzzy head at 200 miles an hour?
Well, first off, I'll say I'm not a doctor, but I do have a loose understanding of what a concussion is. And I would venture to say that based off that understanding, everyone in this room has had a concussion. And it comes to what severity it is and how it affects your performance. The examples I have are, basically it's treated off of symptoms. And there's hardly any way to prove without it being a severe concussion, whether you have one or not. And with that understanding, I have never had a concussion that was able to be medically proved. I've had concussions that a doctor could look at you and say, I think you probably do based off of what you're telling me. And that's why this is such a tough area. It's a complex situation in more ways than one. Obviously, the brain is a very complex part of the body and an important one, but it's also very complex as far as how it's described or what do you want to call it. So from a medical standpoint, to me, if you're saying, Brad, have you had a concussion, I want to see a picture of something that says, yep, there's a bruise, there's a blotch, whatever you want to call it. That's a concussion to me. One that I can prove. Now, obviously, there are some symptoms that, you can believe in. Have I ever had symptoms before where I've had a headache? Absolutely. But I'm going to guess that everyone here has had a situation where they've hit their head on a wall or a cupboard or something and walked away for a headache for a few seconds. If that was in a race car and you said that to a doctor, they'd tell you you had a light concussion. Does that mean you're going to get an MRI and they're going to see a bruise on your brain? Probably not. So I think it's a very difficult situation to explain. And for all of the middle ground, which is essentially where you feel sick but you can't prove anything medically, that's where it becomes very tough. And yes, I've had situations where I've been in that middle ground, and you're left going off of your gut. And, respectfully to Dale, he chose to not put himself in a bad situation. And I think that's very admirable, for sure, because everyone knows that those are cumulative concussions and their effect on your body. And, that's something that he doesn't need to take a risk of. And I think we all respect that, especially, Dale with his passion for the sport and his caring for his competitors to not put him in a tough situation, because it appears that only he knows how severe it is. And
So are there no concerns then that you might race against guys who are still recovering because everybody handles it differently? Is that
I wish I was Kenny Schrader and had a great quip for that, because I know he'd say that if you're looking for brain power in race car drivers, they probably didn't have it to begin with. But he'd probably say it really smart, too, and have some great joke about it. I don't have it. I wish I did. I'm not, to be honest. No, I feel like the drivers in this sport are smart enough to know the line. And usually, if you have an injury like that prevents you from being focused and racing at 100%, it should prevent you from going fast enough to be in the way. So the sport almost naturally clears itself of people like that.
David Newton, Randy Kovitz, Reed Spencer.
Yeah, David Newton, ESPN.com. Brad, following up on that, and kind of playing devil's advocate, while, yeah, it was courageous of Dale Jr. to step forward and go to a doctor on this, he did hide it for 6 weeks, which put, as what Nate was kind of asking, could have put competitors, could have put himself in danger. The doctors were saying maybe this is a big moment that it'll encourage other people to step forward, seeing that a guy like Dale Jr. did, but seeing he's parked for 2 weeks would also make you more wary of wanting to step forward because no driver wants to be taken out of his car?
By saying he hit it for 6 weeks, you're talking about because it happened after Kansas? Is that what you're saying? I haven't heard that from Dale, so I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard that part, so that's news to me. But I mean, I knew that he had wrecked really hard at Kansas. I was there when it happened. I mean, I was physically there and literally right next to him when it happened. He had wrecked, and I'd heard it in my car when we were sitting in the garage, and I looked up and could see the marks and knew that he'd hit really, really hard and that he was probably not going to be okay. And I got in the minivan that we had there and drove out, obviously, as the track was closed while they were cleaning up the car, and looked at the marks and again saw, wow, he hit really, really hard. And he was in the ambulance, and they were checking him out, so I can verify that he went through that process. And I drove by him right when he was getting out of it and picked him up. And I can tell you he sat next to me in the car, and I drove him back to his hauler, and he looked fine to me. I was really impressed by the fact that he looked as well as he did because I would have been really, really sore. So only he knows where it went from there. And I think that's the whole point here is that concussions are mostly self-described or what do you want to call that, self-policed, and that only you know how bad they are. And whatever amount he felt like he had at that point was obviously not enough for him to feel like it would have been to a detriment to others, where at this time it is. So only he knows, and I don't think it's fair for me to comment on that without knowing or walking a mile in his shoes and what he felt and how much it was affecting him. Yeah, I mean, everyone's got their own code, and that's the tricky thing about concussions is that you can't just look at somebody like a broken arm. As you can see a broken arm, you can't just look at somebody and say, well, he's got one and he doesn't. So it's very much self-policed, and there's no answer to it for the racing community, as there's no answer to it for the rest of the sports community, whether it's high school football or college or pro football or hockey or whatnot. The difference in our sport versus those is that when you're unable to make great decisions or you lose your focus, the potential is there for others to get hurt. Where that doesn't necessarily exist in football. If you can't focus, then you miss the play. In racing, if you can't focus, then you knock the wall down or wreck somebody. Obviously, whatever level he had before, he did not feel like he was in jeopardy of that happening, and now he does. So only he knows, and I just have to trust him. A large portion of the sport is based on trust, and that's why it's such a tight-knit community.
Randy Kovitz, and then Reed, and we'll try to get one more, but we're pressing for time here.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, fortunately, Brad answered half the question. I was going to ask him that he was there. Was that the second day there or the first day? Do you remember that, though?
It was the second day.
Second day, okay, the 29th. And being that you've been on that track, and Dale, though, didn't really blame the track for the tire blowout, but is this something that guys have to be concerned about next week? What are your impressions of the track, and is getting used to this higher banking they've got there now going to be a problem?
The track looks great. I don't see any difference in Kansas than any of the other repaves we've done. I'm not sure what circumstance caused that issue, so I don't have an answer for you, to be honest.
We better take final question because we are pressed for time. Reed Spencer.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. I'm going to try to get a non-concussion question in here before the end. With the chase field spread out the way it is right now, are you and Paul at the point now where you look specifically at other competitors and perhaps make what they do influence your strategic decisions at this point?
No, not at all. We're 100% focused on our game and doing what we've done over the last 13 or 14 weeks. If we can do that, I feel confident we can have a strong shot at winning the championship.